Hi again. I'd like to continue the discussion of Swift. And on the last video, we were talking about control structures, and we talked about the if statement. And right now, I'd like to talk about the for loop. Okay, and this will continue the discussion of control elements. The for loop allows you to repeat a block of code any number of times, and a lot of times in your computer programs, you'll want to do that. You'll want to have you'll want to do something over and over again, or a number of times to make whatever is supposed to happen, right? Imagine you had a list of songs in your iTunes library, and you need to draw each one of the cells of those songs into the view. Well, you'd have to repeat through them all. Or imagine you want to search your iTunes library for a particular item. Well, you'll have to loop through each one of those items and then compare the the value of the name or whatever to whatever name or value you're looking for. Okay. Or if you have a lot of objects on the screen, like elements in a game, you might want to repeat through all the elements on the screen and ask if they've collided with a player object, or move them around or something like that. Okay. So for loops are going to happen pretty often. Okay. Swift has a couple for loops. I'm going to start with the first one. I'm going to say for, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to define a variable named I and give it a value of 0. And then I'm going to put the semicolon and say, let's repeat while I is less than 10. And then I'll put the semicolon. And then with each repeat, I'm going to say I plus plus. Okay, so this type of for loop says that we're going to define a variable to count with, and then we're going to set a condition for the count, and then we're going to increment the variable in the last step. So in this case, we've got a variable defined as var I with a starting value of 0, and this could be any number. If we wanted to start on 3 or 5, or start at a different position, right? I'm going to start at 0. And then here, this is the condition, and what I'm saying is we're going to keep repeating the code in the code block as long as I is less than 10. Okay, so if I is 8, we're going to repeat again. If I is 9, we're going to repeat. When I is 10, it's no longer less than 10, so we're going to stop the repeat. Now, if I starts at 0, you'd think that the for loop would run forever, but the last bit of the loop here says to add 1 to I with each repeat. So as long as we're adding 1, sooner or later I is not going to be less than 10 anymore, and then the whole thing will stop. Okay, so the curly brackets define a code block, and the code block is a block of code that you're going to execute with each repeat. And it can be as many lines as you like. I'll just put one line in here for now. And I'll say print line, and I'll say, hello. Okay. And you can see over here it says repeats 10 times. And this little sidebar just kind of gives you a summary of what's happening inside the program. And if you hover over an element and you click on the little circle here, it'll show you the value, or like a visual output, right? So it's showing me the console output here, and print line prints to the console. So this is what print line is actually doing. And I'll close this one, and then we can see it printed out 10 of these. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? So that's 0 to 9, right? And if I wanted to include the number, we could use the, if you remember this from the earlier discussion, I could put the slash and the parentheses, and now I'm going to print the string hello with a space, and then followed by the value of I, and we can see that I has a value of 0 to 9, okay? So that's one way to use the for loop. Here's another way to use the for loop. This time I'm going to, let me actually close this for the moment, right? I'm going to say for, and then I'm going to name a variable. And the variable could be any name. I use I here, but this could maybe be X, right? And I'm going to say X, and then I'm going to say in, and then I can say what my range of numbers are going to be. So maybe I'll say in 0 to 5, and then I'll do the code block, okay? And the 3 dots here mean that the numbers are going to start at 0 and include the 5. So 3 dots says inclusive, and it means count from 0 to 5. So that's going to be 6 values. It's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 5, right? So, that's 6 items, right? And then we could print something out here, and I could say, print, I don't know, how about, yeah. And then, I'll put the value of x in there too. So you can see here it says it repeats 6 times, and if I click the plus button there, you can see the console output here, and it shows me 6 of these, right? 0 and including the 5. In some cases, you may not want to print all the numbers, so maybe you don't want to end on the last one like we did here. So in this case, what you can do is you can say for y in 0, and this time I'm going to do the dot dot and the little arrow, and then I'll say 5, and then I'll say print, and I'll put the y here. And now you can see this one counts 0 to 4, which is 1 less than the 5. Okay? So any one of these for loops, these all essentially do the same thing, but there's 3 different ways to use the for loop. Okay? And again, you could have as much code here as you like. You can have as many lines of code as you want here. And the for loop is happy to execute it all as long as the condition here is okay, and it's going to repeat that block of code. And this is really good for your program because, if you wanted to do something like this where you printed a value out, you don't want to duplicate this line of code a number of times. Instead, you'd rather have the for loop repeat that block of code, right? Makes your program a lot more efficient and makes your programming task easier to keep track of.